I'm the founder, CEO, and managing partner of a large-scale cannabis business. We do vertical integration, cultivation, manufacturing, retail in 4 different states right now: Michigan, New Mexico, Illinois, and our headquarters is here in Arizona, where I am today.
I walked the operation. I have never seen so much weed in my entire life.
Yeah.
Bro, I got home. My wife's like, "Did you smoke?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "You smell like weed." I'm like, "Do you have any idea where I was just at?" Like, tell the people how much you guys produce on a daily basis.
So under the brand High Grade right now, we produce about 4,500 pounds a month in various states. The cultivation you came to is 120,000 square foot indoor right here in the heart of Phoenix. It's fairly large. We got cultivation, processing center, and massive distribution of about 2,800 pounds a month here in Arizona.
Insane. 2,800 pounds.
This is the Mr Brrrr Show.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Today is going to be an awesome episode. You guys are going to learn a ton, and we're going to talk about some stuff that might be a little controversial, but who doesn't like a little controversy? I have actually on the show today someone who I've grown very fond of, actually a partner of mine in one of my businesses. I should say his business. I'm a partner of his, but I'm excited to introduce you guys to someone who is just an awesome human being, super sharp, and has been an entrepreneur since he was just a little boy, which we'll jump into that. And you guys can learn a ton. If you're not following him, I definitely suggest you do so. Without further ado, AJ Sullins, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, Mr. Burr. I appreciate it, man. I'm very excited to be on the show today. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. So let's dive into what your business is right now. You have a cultivation business, a cannabis business, right? And it's not small. It's not a small operation. So talk about that real briefly, but then let's also go to like originally what you were doing with business at a young age.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the founder, CEO, and managing partner of a large-scale cannabis business that we do vertical integration, cultivation, manufacturing, retail in 4 different states right now: Michigan, New Mexico, Illinois, and our headquarters is here in Arizona, where I am today.
It's amazing, man. I walked the operation, and I have never seen so much weed in my entire life.
Yeah.
Bro, I got home. My wife's like, "Did you smoke?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "You smell like weed." I'm like, "Do you have any idea where I was just at?" Like, tell the people how much you guys produce on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So under the brand High Grade right now, we produce about 4,500 pounds a month in various states. The cultivation you came to is 120,000 square foot indoor right here in the heart of Phoenix. It's fairly large. We got cultivation, processing center, and massive distribution of about 2,800 pounds a month here in Arizona.
Insane. 2,800 pounds. Everyone watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts and all that, just rewind and listen to that. 2,800 pounds. It's insane. It's a huge operation. I was super impressed with just how you knew every aspect of the business. Like Sam and I, we walked it and we were asking questions to see how knowledgeable you were. There wasn't one part where you're like, "Let me get back to you on it." You were just boom, 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 rattling off everything. It was super impressive, dude. Super impressive.
I appreciate that. You know, I can't take too much credit for being a legacy cultivator. I've been in the space now for about a decade, and when I started right away, I was tasking myself with focusing on the development side of it. You know, how to build it, what the different ways of piecing together infrastructure was, the different equipment that's used, and I got extremely intimate with every aspect that I could. And now fast forward, you know, I've been able to learn so much from mentors and even from my team that just got a lot of love for the people who taught me.
It's incredible, man. And I think that that might be your superpower, man. Just being able to figure out what a business needs in order to scale, right? Let's talk about when you were a kid, like the business you scaled. We've talked about it briefly before, but let's share with everyone kind of the grassroots, how you became an entrepreneur and how you scaled that.
Sure. It's a long story. You want all the details, Mr. Burr?
I want all the details. Everyone wants the details. They want to know how you go from what you're going to tell them to now you have a business that pumps out $40 million a year in a product. It's incredible. So yeah, let's get
Sure.
into the nitty gritty of the original business.
Sure. So I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Parents entrepreneurs, uncles entrepreneurs, cousins entrepreneurs, and I was exposed to entrepreneurship at a very, very young age. Very blessed to actually be exposed at the age that I was. And so, my dad, he owned multiple Baskin Robbins. When I was a kid, he owned like 9 stores and was doing state fair, balloon fiesta, a lot of concessions. And so it was pretty normal for me to be, at work with him, scooping ice cream on a daily basis at 5 years old, right? Learning how to help customers, learning the customer service aspects, learning how to put a product and turn that into revenue, and really got a ton of exposure at a young age. And so I grew up. I grew up watching entrepreneurs. I grew up having to learn how to manage staff, how to manage money, how to manage the different products, the marketing, and just kind of got well versed very, very quickly. And fast forward a little bit, I was working for my dad pretty much part time, 20 hours a week. By the time I was about 13, and I'd go to school, and then right afterwards, I'd always be working. And that year that I was 13, we were doing concessions for the New Mexico State Fair. If you've been, you probably thought it was a little bit of a crazy state fair. It's a kind of not in the best area of town, but that's where I grew up. I grew up on that state fair, being a carny. Kettle
I think, dude,
corn.
I think state fairs, they're all in like rough parts of town. The Phoenix one, the same thing. Last time I went, I felt like I needed a bulletproof vest, but
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
different story.
And this one's even a little bit more intense too, which is crazy. I've been to the Phoenix one, and it's a little bit more commercialized than this at the time, right? But really, where my personal entrepreneurship career started is when I was 13. My dad actually bought a cotton candy machine. We had always been selling cotton candy, but we were buying it from a wholesaler and retailing it. And when I was 13, he bought one, and of course he said, "Hey, I need you to figure out how to make this cotton candy." And so I started doing so, and very quickly, within weeks, some of the other vendors took note at the state fair, and they said, "Hey, can we buy some from you at wholesale?" And so I went back to my dad and I said, "Hey, I got about 3 vendors right now, maybe 5, that are interested in buying my cotton candy, but I want to do it myself. I want to make it, and I want to sell it to them, and they're willing to pay $1 a bag." And so, if you don't know cotton candy, the margins are crazy. I could produce a bag for about 10 cents and sell it wholesale for $1. And my pops was supportive. And he said, "Yeah, man, what do you need?" I said, "I just need a ride to Costco. I need to get the sugar. I already have enough bags. I have this, I have that." And nothing but supportive. In that first 2 weeks, I made 2 grand. And I went back to my dad and I said, "Hey, did pretty good. What do you think?" He's like, "Damn, you just made 2 grand after
At 13.
school?" Yeah. And he was like, I think
Awesome.
you should try it again. Keep going for the balloon fiesta. And if you haven't been to the International Balloon Fiesta in New Mexico, that's the place to be. You're talking about the world's largest hot air balloon festival there in Albuquerque, and where hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people are coming in from all over the world to see the most. It's just about over 1,000 hot air balloons that all go up in the air at the same time. It's pretty crazy.
Wow.
And it's worth checking out. And so, we had been doing concessions there for a long time. He had been doing it for 20 plus years. And, as I was a kid, I grew up in that. But, 2 weeks later after the state fair, went for it again, made another 2 grand. And so I went back to my pops and I'm like, "Damn, we did it again." It went pretty good. And that was kind of the start of entrepreneurship for me. Just, learning kind of the small lessons all the way up to the big lessons. And that was kind of my first start.
So what were the small lessons?
The small lessons at that age, a lot of it was cost of product and then how to sell it. Pretty quick and easy. I can make 100 bags in an hour. It would cost me about 10 cents per bag, and I could sell it for $1 each, right? And so I was just focused on learning what margins were and learning what products, that I could potentially sell were, and learning how to make a product. And those were kind of the small lessons then. The bigger lessons were really working with the customer. And that's what I thought was the biggest lesson at that time, because I was getting feedback from my customer base. And I got a ton of feedback at that time. So I decided to keep going and focus on that for a while and expand that business.
Love it. And you did that for how long?
I did that all the way up until a couple of years ago, actually. But at that time, I was 13. Fast forward to 16, I had expanded pretty rapidly. I had hired a bunch of my buddies to help out. We were pumping out about 120 to 130,000 bags of cotton candy, and then now kettle corn a year. And the margins were just crazy. And it was a cash-based business, dealing with the different carnies at each festival. At that time, I had gotten contracts with University of New Mexico football, basketball stadium, another couple of large stadiums there in New Mexico, and just focused on work.
What do you think the biggest reason was that you did so well at a young age?
That's a good question. I think it was just one foot in front of the other. There's so much opportunity everywhere, and it's just really applying yourself to something and giving it your best shot. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and kind of taking that risk.
Did you have a passion for cotton candy?
Of course not. No, no.
Okay.
No, I really didn't, and I still won't eat cotton candy. It's just, I got completely OD'd on cotton candy during that time. And it's such a mess. Same with kettle corn. We expanded our product lines, and there's no real passion there. The passion was really about just doing my best and being myself and trying to figure out how to make money.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is because I think so many people out there, they think that they have to find a passion. You always hear, follow your passion, and you won't work a day in your life. And I think that's totally false. I mean, you can agree, right? You don't need to find a passion. You need to find a way to make some freaking money to where you can have your time back. Then you can chase your passion, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I'm in a business right now I'm extremely passionate about, but I'm in other businesses that I'm not, right? And, I agree with you that you kind of got to start somewhere. If you're not passionate about it, then just give it a shot and see if you can be good at it. If you can't be good at it, try something else.
Yeah, get good, get skills. So you built skills at a young age. I think that's what you're saying, like the small lessons were building the skills of how to sell a product, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And how to manage a business, how to scale a business, and really how to make money out of something, right? Pretty much thin air out of sugar.
It's incredible, dude. At 13, man, that's insane. You were making at 13 what a lot of adults make now. And this was you're what, 30, right?
Yeah, I just turned 30, and I started making, over six figures when I was 16, right? And netting over six figures. And I was so dang frugal at the time too, that I was just literally, it was cash based, and I was putting the cash under the mattress, paying my mom some rent, and calling it a day.
That was going to be my next question, actually, because back then, so let's see, at 16, so you're 14 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Anyone that knows anything about inflation knows that 14 years ago, you could buy more anything with $1 than you can today, right? The dollar is worth less today than it was then. So you're making six figures as a 16-year-old kid, really no bills. You're paying your parents out of the kindness of your heart. I'm sure they didn't ask you to pay them rent, right? So that's your only bill that you don't really have to pay. You could have easily, dude, gone out and got a new whip and had all the watches and all the designer clothing. Like, that's what most people do. So speak to that a little bit. Like it might just be innately who you are. You don't care about that stuff, but speak about like how you can delay gratification.
Yeah, I have a perfect example, and you'll actually laugh about this. When I was about 16 or 17, I actually bought a vehicle because I needed something to tow my trailer, right? And I bought a Toyota FJ Cruiser. At the time, it was a really nice car for anyone my age, and I paid cash for it up front. And I actually still drive that car to this day, every day. Haven't switched up, been the same car since I was 16 or 17. And
Really?
yeah, I love the car. Now I got 210,000 miles on it, and it still runs like a beast.
It's a Toyota. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, the delayed gratification, I think a little bit was taught out of fear, to be honest with you, because growing up with an entrepreneur as a dad, especially in a seasonal industry like ice cream, the summers were for saving for the winters, because ice cream sales go down significantly in the winter. And so it was always a question of frugality and really saving money for just in case moments or for opportunities. And, that was a huge lesson learned at that age. And I still carry that to this day.
That's huge. I think listeners, you should go back, rewind, and listen to that again, because most people that start making a little bit of money, I'm guilty of this. When I started making a decent income, I was like 26, 27, and I was making like 200 grand a year. But when you make that kind of money as a W-2 employee, you start getting taxed a lot of money. So I wasn't technically keeping a bunch because I'm getting taxed a bunch. I'm contributing to a 401k, almost 20 grand a year. So boom, that's going down. And then you've got your bills. If you start spending money like it's going to last forever, I went bankrupt at 31. So I learned the lesson of like being broke is not the worst thing in the world. Having some money and then going back to being broke, that sucks. And people think that money is just going to keep coming in, keep coming in, keep coming in. Unless you have like hundreds of millions of dollars, you can go broke very easily. Even with the hundreds of millions, you can go buy an island. You're probably broke then. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I love that you're driving the same freaking truck, dude. That's awesome.
And you know what's crazy about that time? You're making me think back a little bit. But at that time, it was right around the 08, 09 period. And at that time, I was watching, very, very close family members of mine also be fighting bankruptcy that I'm working with or that I'm trying to learn from. And so major lessons learned at that time about frugality. And I think we get stuck on pretty often actually about personal frugality, but we don't talk enough about business frugality and bootstrapping or being resourceful when you're starting a business. And a lot of young entrepreneurs, they come to me, and I love helping out young entrepreneurs. Anyone who's listening right now, if you want to reach out and ask any question, I'm an open book and would love to talk about it, how to support you guys. But, I don't think we talk about business frugality and not paying, millions of dollars for a marketing budget and not paying millions of dollars for a sales budget, but just really learning how to do it yourself and become an expert first. I think it's really important. I think it's really, really important. So it's not just personal, it's business too.
Great point, dude. Such a great point. I actually had someone reach out to me today asking about something, and it was like 5 to 10 grand cost for their business. And they're like, are you going to do this too? And I'm like, no, I don't think I need to. It was for getting better at public speaking. So one, I feel like I'm pretty good at public speaking already. And two, I've always stayed really lean. I'm kind of the same as you. Like, I don't want a whole bunch of overhead. This is my home office, right? Like, I pay an editor that's overseas. It's like $1,000 a month. And he is living really good off that $1,000 a month in the Philippines, right? So staying lean, because business comes in waves, right? And if there's a down wave and you've got all this overhead, what happens then? Stress kicks in, cortisol levels rise. You don't sleep well. You start having bad relationships because you're so stressed out all the time. So, dude, I think staying lean in business is huge. I love that you said that. Absolutely love it. Have you always been like that?
I was until kind of recently. And that's what's interesting is I'm kind of learning from my own recent takes, right? We started doing more revenue, and in my mind, I see these other entrepreneurs with massive businesses on the S&P, and I'm starting to look, what are those type of businesses? What do they spend on a marketing budget? What do they spend on reinvesting in their company? That type of stuff. And so sometimes, I even myself as of late got caught up in the shiny things a little bit of like, well, maybe if we do XYZ in marketing for the next 6 months, that'll increase our sales by, 10x, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned to I got to be true to myself. We got here from being very resourceful and doing a lot of it on our own. My business partners and our director level staff members, and not so much focused on expand, but really focus on let's do what we're good at, and let's keep that going, right?
And how long have you guys had the cannabis business?
Yeah, so rewind a little bit. That was when I was 16, is where I finished off at 21. Okay, is when we opened up the cannabis business, and that year when I was 21, it's kind of a serendipitous story that I love to tell. But at that time, I had contracts with many of the large stadiums, and that year, actually, the University of New Mexico football basketball stadium, they decided to sell alcohol for the first time at their stadiums in history of the school. And so I went back to the board and I said, hey, I want that alcohol contract. I'm your longest tenured subcontractor. I've been here for 7-8 years now, and I want the contract. And they looked at me and they said, are you nuts? You think we're going to give a license for a 21-year-old to sell alcohol to 21-year-olds at these sporting events? And I said, well, why not, right? Why not? And so I kept pushing really hard, actually. And after getting denied so many times, they finally told me, hey, AJ, you can get the contract if you can get the insurance. And they knew damn well I couldn't get that insurance. And so I ended up getting denied like 13 times, just trying to get insurance from different groups. And the business insurance at that time was hard. I didn't have really any business credit aside from the people I knew. And it was really hard to get insurance. So I actually ended up going back to my dad, and I said, hey, your name's Anthony Sullins. My name's Anthony Sullins. What do you say? You get the insurance, and let me see if I can pass it off as my own. And my dad got it the first time, went back to the board, and they said, fuck.
They're like, how did this kid do it? How did he do it?
Yeah, so they ended up giving me the alcohol contract, and in that first year, we actually made 7 figures, and
Nice.
We took that next leap. And at the about 9 months into it, I was pushing as hard as I could on all different directions. I was a senior getting my finance degree at UNM, and I ended up coming into a little bit of trouble. We were having complaints. I was hiring around 130, 150 temp employees every Saturday for a football game. About 30 to 50 of them would stay. The next week, we're having to train the new people, and just constant revolving door. And we got into a little bit of trouble, and that's when the first time of like true discourage took place with me. Of like, maybe I don't want to be an entrepreneur. This is pretty hard. I'm working these crazy hours, trying to go to school at the same time, and there's just red tape. And so at that time, I actually got hired on at Intel on their finance team, and I thought I wanted to do that. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna leave entrepreneurship behind. I'll keep the business going for as long as I can, but I'd rather focus on golfing at 3 and being in an office and not busting my ass like a carny. But I learned that lesson real quick, that has its red tape, and so working at this is pretty much all within the same year, like 21, 22. And I was working at Intel, and I remember specifically, it was pretty hard for me to conform to when's my break, when can I work, can't work at night. They're tracking my keystrokes, that type of stuff. It was a trip. And I remember in a presentation that I did, I was presenting to my boss's boss, and I got pulled out of the presentation. I was presenting a financial model about some equipment that was there at the Rio Rancho Intel. And she said, AJ, every time you present, every single time you want to talk about marketing, you want to talk about operations, we don't want to hear it. Just present the financial model. We'll do the rest. And I walked out of there so discouraged. And I was like, dang, I guess this isn't for me. Entrepreneurship, maybe not for me. And so there was a reflection moment right there where it was, well, do I have her create the destiny and maybe me do good and have a cushier life, or do I just try to do it myself and see what it gets me into? And so,
Good. So take us back to that time. So that was 9 years ago. We're
yeah,
like, I think everyone's had those battles, right? Those inner battles, the inner voice, like your devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other.
oh yeah.
Like how did you get past that point in your life? And I mean, looking back, I'm sure you can say you made the right decision, right?
Yeah.
So what was kind of your process of getting through that time?
I reached out to a lot of mentors of mine, including my dad. And what was really hard is my dad was pushing me hard to stay at Intel. And he
Really?
said, you can do both. He said, look how hard entrepreneurship is. He said, why don't you do both? You keep your corporate job going and you also do your business, and you keep doing both for as long as you can and build it up that way. And I think he was coming from a place of love because he knew the lifestyle that he had been living and working as hard as he was and beating up his body, that he didn't really want that for me, right? He thought it was going to be something else, something more.
Mm-hmm.
And so interestingly enough, I ended up getting offered a job from Intel to move to Chandler, Arizona. And they said, pretty much, you're the low man on the totem pole, and for you to keep your job, you have to move to Chandler. So I told them no. And I said, no, I'm not interested. I'm going to keep my concessions business going. It's doing really well. And about at that same time, I was in my last semester of college, and I did a business plan in my entrepreneurship class about marijuana packaging. And I, always was a smoker since the time I was 12, 13. My parents didn't care because I was getting great grades and I was working all the time. And, it was just something for me. If you're going to sit in front of a cotton candy machine for 10 hours, you might as well smoke a little bit, just to stay active in it. And I built that business plan, and very serendipitous that summer I went to my sister's wedding, and my uncle was there. And I hadn't been super close to my uncle for a long time since I was a real little kid. And at the wedding, he says, I'm actually moving to Chandler, Arizona tomorrow, and your aunt, which was his sister, not his wife, but your aunt is going to help me move all my stuff. So I'm like, oh, cool. Like, interestingly enough, I have the opportunity to go to Chandler. And that next morning, after we partied for her wedding, I get a call at like 7 a.m. and it's him. And he says, hey, your aunt's house burnt down last night from a cigarette on a couch. And she can't help me move my things anymore. Is there any way that you can help me? And I was like, all right, I'm there. So I show up. He's got a giant ass 18-wheeler for me to drive. I'm like, dude, I've never driven one of these. Are you sure you want me to take all your stuff in this? And he said, he's a lot shorter. He said, you can drive this better than I can. You've been driving the trailer and your trucks. And he was like, can you just drive it? So, all right. So 24 hours, I drive out there from New Mexico to Arizona, and I came back within 24 hours. But during that time, I presented my business plan to him, and he starts laughing in my face. I'm like, dude, what are you laughing at? And he says, well, do you know what I'm going to Chandler, Arizona for? And I assumed it was for electrical contracting. He'd been an electrical contractor for 20 years. And he said, well, it is, but I've been doing it for large-scale cannabis cultivations. And it's just funny. I had no clue you're interested in this. So
Crazy.
yeah, a little serendipitous. So I fly back to New Mexico, and I keep running my business. I keep working at Intel for about a month, not 100% knowing when Intel was going to let me go, since I had declined that job. And I get a call from him, and he says, hey, what do you think? I kind of want to start our own cultivation. What's your thoughts on it? He says, I can do the construction. You can do the operations. You already know how to operate a business. What are your thoughts? I said, no, not interested. I think I'm going to stay here. The concessions business is doing well, and New Mexico is going medical right now. So I think I just want to focus on that. I don't want to touch the plant. And he said, well, hold on. I want you to talk to a friend. He's a young entrepreneur just like you. His name is Anthony, and he's been in the cannabis space for a few years. Just call him. Okay. So I call Anthony. He won licenses in Arizona, was currently operating in Oregon, and we hit it off on the first call. And I'll never forget, he actually asked on the first call, he said, "Are you hungry?" And I said, "Yeah, man, I'm so hungry." I said, I'm ready to kill it in something, man. I need a change of pace. I don't think my Intel job's going to last long. So, I think I'm going to do this in New Mexico. So fast forward another month, and I get a call from both of them, and they very swiftly talked me into moving out to Arizona. And so it was kind of a crazy couple of months, a lot of self-reflection as a young kid. And I ended up telling Intel, "You know what? I'll take that job in Chandler. Just give me 4 months to get my concessions business started in Arizona." I went to my pops and I said, "Hey, the concessions business is doing really well. Are you interested in buying in, and you take over all the operations and I'll do the back end HR finance?" And he said, "Hell yeah." And we kept the alcohol contract there at the university. And I moved
under his name.
Well, it was actually
he kept his contract.
Yeah, isn't that hilarious? No, I was actually we were under his insurance, for a while, but we had that contract until about 3 years ago. Right after COVID, the university canceled our contract due to an act of God clause within the contract, and to them, COVID was an act of God. And so, but I ended up moving to Arizona within a week. Asked Intel for 4 months to start my concessions business, which we ended up getting up and running and doing it at the D-backs stadium out here, and just focused on the new venture, focused on the cannabis venture. Literally had a trailer outside that I slept in almost every day. We were putting in 14, 15 hours building out a cultivation. You saw it. That was phase one that we started building. And that first year, we did about $3 million. And very swiftly, my 4 months was up at Intel. And I called back Intel and I said, "Hey, here's your money back. I appreciate you paying for my move, but here's your money back. I'm not starting." And they said, "You're an idiot. There's no way you're going to be successful in that. And I highly suggest you stay on with us." And so that was how the cannabis business got going.
So crazy, man. Like hearing that story, it literally reminds me of yesterday, where you get to like these forks in the road and you can go one way or the other and you could have a completely different life. Me and my wife, we're driving by this place called the Backyard. Have you been? It used to be called the Sandbar.
Okay.
Up in Desert Ridge.
Yep. The Sandbar.
Yes, they tore down the Sandbar and they redid it. Now it's called the Backyard. It's like a totally different place, different ownership, totally different vibe, everything. I'm like, we haven't been in there. I want to go. I want to see how much different it is, because I used to go to the Sandbar all the time, and it hit me. I'm like, because of that place, me and you are together. And she's like, "What do you mean?" We met at Quicken Loans, right? I used to work at Quicken Loans as a loan officer from 2010 to 2013. I left thinking the grass is greener somewhere else. It wasn't. So I jumped from like job to job to job as a loan officer from 2013 to 2016. Okay. That's when I became bankrupt, because I just was trying to search for myself. I wasn't making the money I used to make. I had the lifestyle. I kept spending money. It was stupid. But in 2016, I went to the Sandbar one night and I saw one of the managers there with his team, and I knew everybody. So I'm talking to them, and he's like, "Dude, you should come back." And I'm like, "I can't come back. I've already tried. They won't bring you back." He's like, "I can get you back." I was like, "All right." So I got back at Quicken Loans in 2016 because I was at Sandbar that night, and I met my wife like a month later. She was a new hire.
Oh, wow.
So dude, like if I did not go to Sandbar that night, I would have never met my wife. Wow. I wouldn't have my daughter that we have now. Like, I was literally just talking about this yesterday, dude. There's these forks in the road, and call it fate, call it divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. We get to these forks in the road and we choose which way to go. And it's a drastic difference in our lives.
Yeah.
Like you could have stayed at Intel and you'd probably be miserable right now.
Maybe.
But it's crazy, bro. Like that story trips me out, man.
I'm a big believer in directed path, divine intervention, if you want to call it, believer in God, you know, and it's interesting because we're all waiting for a door to open when the doors are just going to open at the right time. And sometimes you walk through that door, you know, and if it feels right, it feels right.
Yeah. So do you believe in like everyone wants things to happen on their timeline, but it never does. It's never on the timeline you want it. So kind of just surrendering to God's plan.
Yeah, I think my path is already ordered, man. I really do. And, you know, like even times like this morning, you know, where I'm like, why is this not happening right now? Why, you know, it's faith-based that I'm like, well, it'll happen when it's supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm. And do you ever get to a point where you're like, instead of you ask why, like, why isn't this happening? Why isn't this happening? Do you ever get to a point where you're like, well, how can I make it happen faster? Yeah. Do you have that mindset?
Yeah, I think that there's a thin line between God's timing and you doing all the things necessary to get there.
To that timing.
Yeah.
Right. Because I run into people all the time. They're like, man, I can't do this. I don't have the time. You don't understand, Devin. I got all these bills. And I'm like, you're making excuses for one. Two, you can do it. You just have to figure out how. You have to ask the question, how can I do it? As soon as you ask how, your brain opens up to possibilities. You start trying to find things that, to your point, divine intervention, God has placed in your life to take you down that path. But you have to ask the question. You have to search for it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think through that process, I've also, I think my dad was right. Dinner and a movie is the way to go. You know, try out both. And I think he was right on that. Now I start to think about it. It's like, thank God he told me stick it out with Intel, see what happens, right? See what happens. And what that did at that time is, you know, we were risking it all in a new venture. And at that time, I felt comfort that, well, worst case scenario, I started Intel again. Mm-hmm. You know, and I got 4 months to figure out if that's going to be it or not, right? And so, you know, there's that comfort there for sure.
So how do you get past the comfort zone? What's your process of getting past being comfortable?
You know, it's interesting because I hear a lot of public speakers talk about the comfort zone. And a lot of times I couldn't disagree more. Everyone's like, you got to run where you're uncomfortable and that's where you're going to make it the biggest, or, you know, you got to pass that threshold. I disagree a little bit with that. You know, I feel like you need to be comfortable in all aspects of life. And if the term's uncomfortable, well, maybe it is because you're taking a risk, but you need to find out how to be comfortable in the uncomfortableness, you know, and to me, it's not being uncomfortable. It's, you know, you're in a finance meeting and maybe you're short on cash that week and it's okay. I'm comfortable here. I know we're going to be okay.
Because you've been there.
Let's focus XYZ. Where are we getting that money for maybe whatever it is, payroll, whatever it may be, right?
I love that, man. One thing that one of my mentors taught me when I was trying to get into public speaking, this was 2022. So first time I ever spoke on stage, May of 22. And dude, I was terrified, bro. Like it was like, I had a blazer on. By the time I went up to go speak, luckily I had the blazer on because my shirt underneath was soaked, bro. I'm sweating profusely. But then as soon as I got up there, I'm just talking about what I know and understand. It was my Airbnb properties and how I do them as being the bank. So I'm just talking about what I know. If you put me up there and said, hey, explain rocket science. Yeah. I'd be like shaking like a leaf because I don't know anything about rocket science.
Yeah, it's not real. It's fake. You know,
yeah, but like I knew the topic, so I calmed down. And then he taught me, he's like, dude, think of that as not being nervous. Think about it as being excited. Like you're excited to give to the people that are out there. You're going to give them your knowledge. You're up there for a reason. So you're always going to have those nerves, but you're not scared. You're excited. And as
Yep.
soon as I was like, that makes sense, because I used to play basketball in high school. And same thing, I was always nervous before the game. Ball went up, go time. I was in the game. I was excited. So I think about it like that now when I go speak on stage, or if I'm in any situation, go into a room where I don't know anybody. I'm not scared. I'm not nervous. I'm excited.
Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
have two topics on that I always lean to, pretty much sayings. One's embrace it. Okay,
Mhm.
you're uncomfortable, you're nervous, whatever it may be. Well, embrace that, really feel those feelings, and be present, be in the moment. It's like, yeah, I'm shaking a little, feels kind of crazy, right? And just really embracing that. The other one's being true to yourself and having that confidence that, I'm going to be true to myself today, even though I'm sweating on stage. And I know I'm going to walk off here saying, well, I was true to myself. And, I'm confident that I did my best.
That's so funny, being true to yourself. Because I had this happen. I think it was this year, beginning of this year. I was speaking on stage, and it was the biggest stage I'd spoke on. It was the most people I've ever spoken in front of. And I had a blazer on. It's usually what I wear. I'll wear a t-shirt, blazer, jeans, and some Jordans. That's like the Mr. Brrrr uniform on
Okay.
stage. Dude, I was sweating profusely. I was pretty nervous. Again, excited, nervous, whatever you want to call it. And I made a joke of it. I'm like, I'm sweating. I'm like, whew. Blazer was the wrong choice. I take the blazer off, the entire place starts dying laughing. So like just making a joke out of it and keeping things light, all of a sudden I was like, boom, I'm in this. Let's go.
Yeah,
It was fun, man.
that's solid. I like that story. It's all too often that we shy, we as just population, we shy away from the uncomfortableness, and I'd rather lean into it.
Yeah, get like you said, comfortable being uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? So
Especially if
what
you want to be an entrepreneur, man, because you're going to be, if you want to call it uncomfortable, you're going to be uncomfortable a lot every day, every night.
100%, man. And so you've built the business from that first year, 3 million, you said, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now it's 40 million.
Yeah. So that was back in 2017,
Okay.
2017, I believe. And we went from 3 to 7, 7 to 12, and then had a major leap in 2020 when we expanded to different states. And now we're set up to do about 40 this year, which I'm really excited about. Um, One thing I've learned is 40 feels like 10, 10 feels like 3 at times, and not a lot changes. Mostly what changes is the team you have behind you. Now we can afford a team. Thank God for my team, man, because right now I have the best leadership team I've ever had rolling with me, and it's made it to where I can enjoy life a little bit more. I don't feel like I'm doing 14-hour days anymore.
That's amazing. So how did you get to the point where you scaled it? Like you scaled your cotton candy business from 13 to 16. You guys were doing 6 figures. You started off making 2 grand. You've scaled the cannabis business from 3 grand to pacing for 40. Like what's kind of those first steps to scaling a business for all like the entrepreneurs out there that are early or that are just struggling and they're kind of stagnant and they can't scale?
Yeah, it really depends on the industry. But the best advice I can give is take small steps. If you're a young entrepreneur right now, or you're maybe just in a startup starting a business, have a proof of concept first. I get approached by a lot of people about like, hey, invest in my business. I'm like, cool, let me come see it. And there's just no proof of concept. It's an idea.
Hmm.
And I always tell as many people as I can, if you're starting a new business right now, start it in your basement, man. Whatever you can do to have zero overhead, low overhead, where you're not risking too much, you get proof of concept, and make some money then, and then expand. Just really start small and be resourceful and bootstrap it,
And
even if you have the money to go bigger.
when you say expand, like what's the best way to do that? Because we talked about keeping it lean. So how do you expand and still keep it lean?
Yeah, absolutely. Based off the industry, for us, it was expanding our footprint. And so it was going from 30,000 square feet to 60,000 square feet of cultivation, then to 120,000 square feet after we were just selling out. And we knew we couldn't, the more we produced, we knew we were going to sell it. And And, and we found that very similar in different states and different markets that we expanded to. But cannabis is pretty unique in that, it's new. And really the expansion takes place based off of new markets becoming either medical or legal for adult use. And so it makes it to where, like the new up and coming state right now is Florida, right? It's still medical, and ultimately, now cannabis entrepreneurs are rushing there, right? And so, there's kind of a path laid out of, if you're planning on nationwide expansion for cannabis, you're just waiting on the next regulations to come out.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that's what really interested me on getting into it with you, was different regulations and what that meant for like where the business is going. So let's talk about the New Mexico operation that you guys are building out, and what's changed with legislation and all that to make it more attractive for investors.
Yeah, definitely. So specifically, Arizona is widely different than New Mexico. New Mexico is widely different than California, and we see different regulations kind of coming out all the time. Unfortunately, this industry is riddled with red tape. It's very difficult to operate in, especially compliantly. And when you're doing it compliantly, you're still fighting against, black market and non-compliant producers, which makes it tough to really get a good understanding of the market share when you have a completely siloed market that's taking place right out from under you,
Mm-hmm.
And so New Mexico is very attractive because, one, it's the state I was born and raised in, so a lot of connections there. Two, the way that they released the regulations, they made it so that it's a limited plant count state versus just a limited license state. And I feel like they learned from Arizona a little bit on that, whereas Arizona is a limited license state. There's only 138 active licenses, but there's no cap on cultivation square footage, and there's no cap on plants. And so what created a lot of saturation in Arizona was massive 600,000 square foot to 1 million square foot greenhouses being built, and then producing, 20, 30, 40,000 pounds, whether that's monthly or a year. And New Mexico, they stopped that, right? And they said, no, we're only going to release a limited amount of 17,000 plant count licenses. And so we were able to receive one of those. And, for what I see for New Mexico compared to Arizona is that's going to stop a lot of saturation, which is ultimately going to keep price points high and margins high for the business owners.
Yeah. I mean, talk about that. I mean, it's like anything. If I always bring it back to inflation, as the federal government prints more money, what happens to all the other dollars? They become less valuable, right? So it's the same thing if there's, let's say, a plant count of 10,000 or a plant count of 1 million. Which ones are going to be more valuable?
Exactly.
So it's like, it makes so much sense, man. Makes so much sense.
Yeah, so New Mexico is exciting for that reason. We're currently operating retail as well as outdoor cultivation there, but we're currently building out an indoor cultivation, and just kind of learning from mistakes in the past. Our goal has been for New Mexico, just based off of demographics, is focusing on the very cheap product as well as the more expensive product, so that we can kind of hit both sides of it, so that, ultimately we've seen people get squeezed out of the middle. And that high volume game of cheaper product always does well, and then really high quality cannabis people still want. The connoisseurs are still going to always buy it.
So you're going to have the dirt weed with the seeds and stems, and then you're going to have, what was that one movie with Half Baked? What was the Mr. Good Guy?
Yep, Mr. Good Guy.
Was that the name of their company they made?
Yeah, it was. And what's funny about that, because if I remember correctly, they had the yellow happy face.
Yeah.
David Dobrik just recently launched a cannabis brand in California, replicating that.
Did he really?
That one, yeah. Yeah,
wow.
That's good marketing.
I don't do drugs, just weed.
Exactly.
I love that movie. Love that movie, man. So what's next for you? I mean, you've crushed it on the cannabis side. You crushed it on the, I've never heard of someone crush it so much on freaking cotton candy, especially at 13 years old, bro. So what's next for you?
It makes me laugh when you say that, crushing it on cotton candy, because I think back and I remember the margins and how simpler my life was at the time. And sometimes I'm like, man, what would happen if I just kept doing that? But what's next, right? So with our cannabis business, there's very few times of very high valuation in the space due to that the peak has already taken place in 2018, 2020. That's when very high valuations were taking place, and many public companies as well as many private, they were receiving extremely high valuations for their businesses to sell. And what I believe is that there's going to be two more instances of that kind of in total for the rest of the industry. One of them is going to be a DEA rescheduling, which the DEA has already come out and said that they're planning on rescheduling in the next year. It looks like still a lot of questions around that. And the second one is federal legalization. And the thought process is right now there's a ton of public companies that are not in this cannabis industry that are listed, on different exchanges like the NASDAQ, or have different capital stacks that hold them back from being able to participate in the cannabis industry. And what I believe and what I've seen from quite a few different economists here in the cannabis space is that a DEA rescheduling in this next year is going to make it to where now a lot of your big pharmaceutical companies, which are not my favorite, I'm completely opposite on that spectrum, very plant-based kind of guy, but your big pharma, your big alcohol, big tobacco, that now the money that they've been waiting to put into the cannabis industry, they're going to start to deploy and have the ability to finally deploy. And so from my standpoint, I think what's next is really packaging up our businesses to sell. And, I would love to be in this space for a long time. I really do love what I do right now. And, but at the same time, I don't want to miss, and I want to be involved in a big sell, and I want to learn from that. And I don't want to wait for federal legalization, because I don't know when that could be. It could be 10 years. It could be 20 years. I'd rather stay focused on what we can control right now, which is, that there's an opportunity for a large sale in the near future.
Would it make sense then to not sell off everything?
Yeah, I think that there's opportunity for that. And, I have partners in various capital stacks in different states. And so it makes it to where, some might be very attractive to sell now, and some might be very attractive to hold on to. And so from my standpoint right now, it looks like a conditional merger, where if there's a buyer at the highest price for our facility in Michigan and Arizona, okay, great. Well, then we'll merge them together and package them up for a sale. But if one's going to be discounted by being packaged in that, well, then the merger doesn't take place and we sell one and not the other.
Yeah. And then hold on. And then if it's federally legal in 5 years, 15, 20, and then the valuation goes just bonkers, then you sell that one at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Or potentially in the meantime.
Got it. Makes sense.
So that's kind of what's next.
So how could people, if they wanted to get in to something like that with you, how could they do it? Or can they do it?
I think so. Yeah. I think there's opportunities to get in with us. What we found is we like the network side of raising capital. We've raised a ton of capital, and through that process, we've really created a hell of a group that's very interested in participating, very interested in being involved, us participating in their businesses. And so absolutely, if any listeners are interested in passively investing in the cannabis space, we do it very specifically to avoid any type of, SEC rules that would get us in trouble with the way in which we raise capital. And so, reach out and let's talk about it.
So how can people reach out to you if they are interested in that, or just like you said earlier, to ask you questions if they're new entrepreneurs and they want to pick your brain a little bit?
Yeah, you can find me in many different ways. Instagram is key. I'm learning from you, Devin, with the amount of followers you have. I'm at AJ Sullins on IG with 2 periods in between the A and the J, AJ Sullins. And that's a good place to reach out. Aside from that, you'll see our brand at a lot of places, especially here in Arizona. It's called High Grade.
Love it. Well, dude, I can't believe it's been an hour already. Like, it's like the fastest hour ever. Just a wealth of knowledge, man. I have so much respect for you and what you've done with business, and we didn't even really jump into like personal life and all that stuff, which I'm sure we could go into that can maybe be a second episode, who knows. But super impressed with you, dude. Super sharp. We all got to get together and get the ladies together, have some dinner. Always good to break bread with good people.
Absolutely, man. I'm in town for a few weeks now, and so we should definitely get together here soon and keep this conversation going, because there's just so much opportunity out there, whether it's the industries that I'm in currently or other industries. And so it's always good to talk to like-minded people and really share thoughts, share knowledge, and leave our egos at the door. So I appreciate how you've invited me on and kind of opened the door for me to share my story.
For sure, man. I gotta start showing you the ninja moves of insurance, brother. Because if you tied that in with what you're doing, crazy. It'd be like, it literally would be like a cheat code. So we could get into it later, but let's leave the listeners with like one thing that if you could just tell them one thing, like one bit of advice, if it was the last thing you could tell anybody on the face of this earth, what would it be to help them through business or just life in general?
Sure. Don't give up. Don't give up. There's a lot of opportunity and a lot of ways to be happy, and just don't give up. Today might not be the best day, but tomorrow will be, and keep that positive spirit and share that with others.
I love it. I love it, man. He started with one foot in front of the other. When we started, that's what you said, one foot in front of the other, and he's ending with don't give up, just one foot in front of the other. So much value, guys. If you're not following this man, make sure to do it. And if you got value from this episode, which I know you did, share it with other people. The more you share, the more we all grow together. And if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're not subscribed, shame on you. So subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified anytime I put out videos. Like this video, comment, do all this stuff so the algorithm loves it. Until next time, guys, I love y'all. Peace.
Brr.